All right, we are on the record and under some sort of order on Budget and Finance Committee meeting here on February 21st, Thursday, February 21st, is just after noon. Mr. Weddle.
John Weddle.
Forrest Dunbar.
Felix Grant.
Eric Croft.
Alex Slifka, CFO.
Lance Wilbur, OMB.
Brett Dice.
Tom Graves.
Jason Bockenstead.
That's who we have at the head table. Everyone's reminded to speak up.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yeah.
Suzanne LaFrance is on the line.
Suzanne, are you there?
Hi, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'm here.
Good. Appreciate that, Mr. Rivera. Anybody else on the line? So we have our normal agenda, but we moved up an A ahead of that, impacts from proposed FY 2020 State of Alaska budget. Frankly, that's the biggest issue facing us right now. And so while those others, we'd like to get these reports on the financial status. And if we spent the whole time on this elephant in the room, that would be appropriate. But we'll try and spend a lot of time on that, and then if we have time left over or need to do specific things, we'll hit those. And on those, Mr. Wilbur, Desiree from our office and you and I sent you an email, but just today, about some of the ways we might reformat how things are presented. I think we get a tremendous amount of detail and a very good overview, and we're to some extent searching for something in between that can give us a little more information, but not the depth of information that seems to be alternative.
So I got an opportunity to take a look at that. I responded to Desiree and Barbara, and we'll work with Treasury and folks to get you the information you're looking for in a different format.
We don't want to waste a lot of your time or any of your time, and I heard maybe quarterly would be even better, but anyway, at some point that level.
Okay.
Fabulous. Mr. Wilbur, are there any impacts from the proposed FY 2020 budget that leap out to you?
So there's two significant ones as it relate to our 2019 approved general government operating budget. We have $6 million in there for revenue sharing, and then we have about $2.5 million from oil and gas tax revenues that would come in on the governor's proposed budget. Those two impacts would have an immediate and direct effect onto us, which is about $8.5 million. There's probably some other, matter of fact, there are some other impacts in there, and I'm going to let Ona talk about them maybe in a little bit more detail.
Some people are surprised that we have any oil and gas property impacts, thinking it's Valdez, North Slope, and Fairbanks to some extent. What do we have?
So the primary impact is that when we assess property taxes, it's on real property and then on personal property. It's the personal property in which they have assets. Oil and gas companies would have assets here they would keep here, pipe, drill rigs, whatever that might be. When they keep that inventory here, we get we have an assessment on that inventory.
Are there some small pipelines that we have a property tax on? Lines
I'm gonna let Treasury correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not so much the pipeline as much as it is the inventory. That's the key. But compared to the North Slope, compared to Fairbanks, and compared to Valdez, that amount of tax contribution to our budget is pretty much insignificant to the contribution it would be to North Slope, Valdez, and Fairbanks. Okay. So those would be the direct impacts. Indirectly, if the governor's budget has changes to resources available to Health and Human Services, depending on that turnout, it could significantly impact the revenue coming into DHHS. But I think beyond that, the thing that OMB is most concerned about is the effect that it would have on the school district and how that might ultimately affect our budget process as it relates to how the school district. So that's, and again, until the budget is final, again, the direct effect to us is immediately $8.5 to $9 million in revenue directly to us, and then there's compounding impacts as to state programs and then to what would happen to the school district. Particularly as it relates to bond indebtedness. Yeah. That would be the one thing that we would have to struggle with the municipality at the taxpayer side. So we're still sort of taking that piece in. We're getting new pieces of information every day, how it could affect our bond rating, or at least the states, and a variety of things. So And then I've been in contact with Andy Ratliff at the school district on how they're going to prepare and propose their budget, which is due to the assembly on March 5th. And so we've been talking to them about what their proposal might look like. So that's about what I have to offer sort of at that level. And I know that Chief of Staff has some more information on maybe on particular programs that she's been chatting with departments and legislators about.
I think we'll have a lot of questions, but Ms. Browse?
Yeah, so what you have in front of you is a compilation of various pieces of information from the school district and from our departments. It is not an exhaustive list by any means. There is a lot of digging that we are going to have to do to figure out exactly how much of each of the items in the proposed budgets will affect us, particularly in departments like the health department, because a lot of their operations are pass-through grant funded or federal money that comes through, and the clarity on the budget proposal is not there. So figuring all of that out is relatively tedious. The health department has done a very good job. As Lance said, the biggest direct impacts to the municipality, actual cash that is coming out from the state revenue that we get, is municipal assistance and revenue sharing. The dollar amount on this sheet is the 2018 dollar amount that we got.
So you handed these out, and they're beautifully collated too, but collated. So we've got that overview sheet that you're going over, and then what's in the packet?
So the first
or you want to
page-
go through it as you go? Yeah.
Yes, I would like to go through this.
Okay.
So Medicaid, municipal assistance, oil and gas property taxes are some of the biggest ones, but the municipal assistance is a direct cash cut, and we cannot recover that any other way. It is outside the tax cap, so we can't spread that around. So about $6.1 million. Oil and gas property taxes, as Lance said, is about 2.5, 2.6 projected. That is under the tax cap, so that will be accommodated by increasing other property taxes that people pay. The public health nursing cut that the health department would realize is $400,000 of a cut. That is 3 to 4 positions of nurses at the health department who would have to be eliminated from our budget.
That was an outside the cap item too, huh?
Yes. The indirect revenue impacts are likely to be financially larger, but they are difficult to quantify at this point in time because we don't know exactly what the proposed Medicaid cuts mean. They have cut the various Medicaid programs and rolled them into one large Medicaid bucket. So we are not exactly sure what they're proposing to keep or not keep. What we do know is that our ambulance service fees that we get on an annual basis are about $9.2 million. A lot of that is Medicaid reimbursements. So if people are no longer eligible for Medicaid, then we will no longer receive that reimbursement money. And I believe, Lance, that's also outside the cap, right?
Yep.
The ambulance service fees are also outside the cap, so that cannot be made up if we lose that funding. Medicaid is currently projected at a 40% cut, so we are assuming a 40% cut in $9.2 million. So that's another decrease that we cannot make up. The Medicaid services line is the entire cut for the whole state. But because we don't know, yes, not just us.
I was wondering if we had some zeros. Yeah.
No, we do not have that entire service. But because we don't know how it will trickle down, we can't presume anything about what we would get. So if you take 40% of that, then that's what our number would be. And Natasha's here; she can probably speak more eloquently about all of the healthcare cuts. One of the things that is a relatively low dollar amount, but a very high impact within our community is the Human Services Community Matching Grant Program. The Anchorage portion of that program is $826,000. The second page with the color-coded table that looks like this is the list of recipients for the HSCMG program. The performance measure that they are judged on, how many people they serve, what they what their activities represent. The number in the, I say blue column, but they're both blue. The projected annual served is the number of people that those programs serve on an annual basis. And the red numbers are the numbers of people who would be displaced because of the cut to the HSCMG program. Our HSCMG pass-through goes to these recipients at approximately $150,000 per group. Some of them are staggered a little bit lower, but $150,000, and they use those funds to match other grant programs that they apply for. So there's a multiplier effect, and they lose more and more funding. So you'll see that, Awake is projected to lose 830 people served.
These are people, not numbers.
Those are people. So
Dollars,
up at the
yeah.
top it says HSCMG grant impacts by person count. So the problem with this is all of these programs who provide housing in our community would be either underserved or completely deleted as a program, which would mean that our emergency responders and our health department is required to respond in ways that are much more expensive and much more dangerous for our community. The ADV SAIP program, Alaska Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Intervention Program, is another program that is generally funded by the state on a rolling basis. They, in the past, have done it year to year. They have done it in 3 years at a time, most recently. That is a program that we provide a match to, and losing their money means that our service, the ADV SAIP program that the AHD administers, is actually a statewide program. It's not just for Anchorage. It's one of the reasons we have fought so hard to keep it in our legislative program and continue to be funded by the state, because it does serve a lot in Anchorage, but a lot outside of the rest, to the rest of the state. We believe that that will not be funded at all. That has not been illustrated yet in the budget, but we assume that that's going to be a problem. And then the other one that we got news of today is that Fitch has said that because of the state's activity, it will potentially affect Anchorage's bond rating. And so the third page has the Fitch release that explains how and why, but that dollar impact is potentially significant. If our bond rating decreases, then our cost of money goes up.
Mr. Dunbar may have a question for Hiralee.
Yeah, actually, we just went by, and I think you answered it, but I'm curious how to structure this when I talk about it, because I had heard from a staffer in Juneau that the Alaska Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Intervention Program was just like missing from the budget, like they couldn't find the line item.
Correct.
So what does that mean? How do we even talk about that? Like, what, are they going to cut it?
So it is cut. Theoretically, if
It
you
is
start
cut.
with a zero-based budget and
Yeah.
only add in the things you want to have in there, it is not in there. So it is gone. The same way the revenue sharing is gone. The administration has discussed proposals that they plan to.
So 100% cut from the state to this program.
Correct.
Okay. Until they tell us otherwise.
Correct.
Mr. Weddleton.
So, this is a pretty dramatic budget change, but how real is it? If the legislature really does the budget, they won't have that done until July. So we have to pretend this is real when we do budget revisions?
I think that we should behave as if this could be real. Could be, I mean,
It is.
through the chair, Mr. Weddleton, none of us are in charge of what the legislators are going to do. So if this is the administration's proposed budget, then this is their intent. So we have to behave with the intent to respond. And the difficulty from our perspective is that a lot of this, we can have conversations with people and figure out how to make things work, but there's a lot of holes that we cannot fill, and there are even bigger, badder positions that the rest of local government has been put in this state. The oil and gas personal property tax taking for the North Slope Borough is 95% of their budget. If we were to lose 95% of our revenue, the entire city would disappear.
But
Yeah,
moving forward, we have to pretend this is real. So in April, when we look at our budget again, there's some budget
I think so, yeah.
And we will move forward that that's our budget until we find out different.
That's how we have treated our projections traditionally. Every year, we bring forward the budget with the information that we know to be the information at that time. And this, as we see them go through the legislative process, we're going to have to see what's Senate Finance doing. What's the response, from all the other communities? Where is it actually going? It's going to take a lot more activity with our local legislators, with the statewide legislators, and hopefully the community saying, we can't handle this kind of. This is $1 million in an HSCMG program. We understand that you're trying to cut the budget, but you're displacing 2,700 people from a home for $1 million. Those are the kinds of things that need to be, discussed, and that we, I think, should all take to the governor and the legislators and let them know that it's irrational.
So I have me and then Mr. Dunbar. The question Senator Dice and I were talking about right before the meeting is, we don't want to overreact, but you don't want to. You don't want to have no reaction. They say, I guess it's fine. So you're hitting a fine line. But this wasn't just a press release or a early draft or whatever. This is what was submitted to the legislature in the constitutional capacity. Yes. So I think just respecting the office, you have to say, you wouldn't have meant this serious if you didn't submit it to the legislature, and therefore it is. And while the legislature has a tremendous amount of power in this regard and the ultimate appropriation authority, the governor has a fairly strong, by U.S. standards, line item veto that takes a 3/4 vote to overrule. So if this is serious and if he means it, he can do this. And it takes, 75% of the legislature overruling him. I don't know what was intended by this. This is what I want, or this is a gesture of look how big our problem is. But I think we have to treat it as serious. I'll come back around. I had a question on the weird impact of a reduction in the foundation formula, which I don't think we've ever seen, and where we usually talk about we increase the formula, that increases our ability, so we could spend another $1 million towards them. If we really go backwards, it has this weird savings for us and I want to understand that. But I had Mr. Dunbar and then Mr. Dyson on.
Yeah, so to get a little more specific, he has line item veto to do things like get rid of revenue sharing. And I think building a budget that assumes that that's going to go away is not a bad idea. Property taxing, he actually has to get passed. Right? You have to get a bill passed. And I think I personally think that's extremely unlikely given what it would do to the more select boroughs. So I think there are some things that we should take as this is probably going to happen and more likely than others. But my specific question to you, I keep coming back to this domestic violence, sexual assault prevention program. How big was that program? Do you know how many people was in it before?
I think the dollar amount is $1.3 million. Natasha, do you know how many people are served by ADSA?
I can send you guys the report, but it's a pretty comprehensive program that has positions in the prosecutor's office and the police department, in the provider environment and in the courthouses, and it's fairly sophisticated, and the state has been adopting portions of it, so we can provide you with that.
Okay, thank you.
And through the chair, we can discuss the ASD ramifications. There's 2 documents in your packet that are analysis from the school district about their cuts particularly, and what the decrease in the base student allocation formula would mean for them, and the decrease in local match, as you said, how that's...
Do you lay out the decrease in local match?
Yes. I did not. The school district did in this document.
Well, you collated it, so it's yours. Senator Dyson.
I think we're headed for some very, very difficult times. I have a proverb that says public policy makers never make the right decision at the right time. And when they actually know what it might be, they cannot get the political support to do it. So I think the state is headed for a train wreck. The governor will try to stick by his promises, full dividends, and balanced budget. And So that at the end of the day, they're going to have an unbalanced budget. They have 2 or 3 choices: broad-based statewide tax, taking some or most of the constitutional budget reserve, which requires a 3/4 vote, isn't it?
Yes, it does, as I recall.
Yeah, and or a significant chunk, 2/3 of what's left. Well, using money for the earnings reserve account, which seems for some people the third rail that nobody dares touch unless they be castigated publicly. So they will, in my view, it'll be some temporizing. It'll be very significant cuts that stick. And as you anticipated, Mr. Dunbar, the Municipal Assistance will probably not make it back into the budget. And there's a fair amount of antipathy amongst the rural legislators giving Anchorage anything. You know, and so I think we need to plan for it. And I think that we need to plan for a rational, principled solution to this. Won't happen for 2 or 3 years. Darn it. Yeah, it is a perfect storm.
Thank you.
No safe harbors.
So
Yeah, they made it pretty.
the ASD analysis of the budget, it's the last thing in our package. So it's about a $300 million overall reduction. If that's where we get that 24, I guess I wasn't including the HB 287, which is an impact. So that gets us to 330, 340 of overall statewide impact, of which we own about 24 to 25%. But so it would be 86 million out of the school, and if it's done in terms of a BSA reduction, we then would be constrained and say, sorry, we're reducing our contribution to you by 20 million, essentially.
Correct.
Bucks. Do you know, Ms. Gross, is that a constitutional, a federal law, a state law that?
We don't know.
It's a state law.
It's a state law.
Mr. Dyson handed me we would like out of that. We're talking about our cap on contribution, right? And so I think I know there's some interest from him and me, some from other people about where do we run into that? State law, I believe you, but is that backed by, it's a federal requirement of disparity between rich and poor school districts? Is it a constitutional one, or is it just state law one? It doesn't solve the problem. It allows us to soften it somewhat.
And we're having discussions with the school district so we can ask those questions, figure out what their course of action is, what they plan to do. Their total cut is about $150 million with bond debt reimbursement and operating budget cuts. Because of the BSA formula and the way the local match works, even if we were able to make up that money somewhere in the tax cap, we wouldn't be able to make it all up because of the BSA limitation. So the school district is pretty hamstrung.
I glanced at the Fitch statement. So it's a lot about the dramatic impacts for some of the other districts, the North Slope, Rural, Fairbanks, and Valdez. But it does say that this trickle down and the loss of municipal assistance for us.
Right, it says the potential negative impact to
Everybody.
municipals, bond rating. Which we have dealt with before. I believe 2 years ago, during the bond rating conversations, they made similar sort of motions to say, if the state doesn't get its act together, you're all going down.
And if I might add, as a part of that, they said if your rainy day account, whatever you call it, isn't there, then we're going to downrate you because you're not being prudent. You don't have options.
Any Suzanne, you want to say? I think we're a little stunned here. You want to say anything?
Thank you, Mr. Kraft. Actually, I came from a meeting this morning where we were talking about the impact to education, and that initially it was stated that there would be a reduction to the BSA, but that's still somewhat unclear that there may not be a reduction to the BSA, but that it would just be underfunded. And so we would still be able to possibly, theoretically, fund our portion to the maximum local contribution. But then, of course, there's still a huge, tremendous gap concerning the underfunded piece. And it seems like people are still definitely trying to figure out what exactly is going to be the impact. Although, this were to pass, of course, it would be, as Mr. Dyson said, a train wreck. It's absolutely divorced from reality. There's been no input, no analysis. I can't even believe we're talking about this at a certain level. But I do have a question.
Yeah. Okay.
So as far as our local contribution, which I understand it can be 2 mils or 23% of the BSA, what have we been doing? Have we been doing 2 mils or is it 23%?
Great. We've been going to the cap, I know, but what has been our cap? Do you know the answer to her question?
I think right now we're using we're using the mill method.
Is it the higher of those two? You get to go to the higher?
I believe that's what we're using. I can confirm, but yes.
We have consistently, I'm sure you know, Ms. LaFrance, done the maximum that we can do. Some municipalities do, some don't. But Mr. Wilbur will get you the answer of which that maximum has been.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chakra,
Yeah, Mr. Dyson.
I apologize. I've got to take off for another meeting here soon. Two things. Mr. Falsey, this may be close to you. I was hoping that in the fall that some combination of the Assembly legislative liaison function and the administration and Wendy Chamberlain, our lobbyist, who's in my opinion really good and a very good choice, would get together and talk about strategies of how, and I've been saying Anchorage handles a whole lot of Alaska's social problems, solving problems of not our origin, and we should get more support for what we do for the rest of the state and so on, and for whatever reason. But Mr. Falsey, do you and the mayor, what's our strategy as a municipality for approaching the legislature and the governor?
To the chair, I think I'll solicit the assistance of Jason Lockstead and Miller Browse to really manage that program for us. The mayor was just recently in Juneau as part of the Anchorage Municipal League efforts, and I'll turn to Mona and Jason for Wendy Chamberlain and Jim Lockstead.
I'm happy to do it. Also, Jim Lockstead. So the mayor was just down in Juneau with the AML conference. I think partially in response to what Mr. Weddleton was saying about, is this real, should we take this seriously? As an administration who has proposed budgets, we propose budgets that if they were accepted all at once, would be good for our constituents and for the community that we're representing. So I think to try and game whether or not it's intentional or if we should take it seriously is dangerous, considering we are not the ones in the seats that get to make that decision. The municipal program for approaching the legislature, normally we would have had a legislative program previously approved. We wanted to know what the governor's budget proposal was going to be before we decided what our priorities were. Because if we put something forward expecting that things were going to be business as usual, and it comes out with Medicaid cuts and municipal assistance being cut and these human services matching grants, those are priorities to this city, and we would not want to put a legislative program forward without including those. So we're working through all of these cuts to make sure that the legislative program represents what we prioritize and what the Assembly then prioritizes. I think given the status of the legislature, it's going to take longer than normal.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so we maybe have a delayed runway on that. But I think based on the conversations that we've had with the mayor, that the mayor has had with AML, is the intent is to fight.
All right, I need to run, and I appreciate that. That's a rational answer. And
I can give you an irrational one.
I have lots of help on that. And the other thing, we conservatives like to have belts, suspenders, safety pins, Velcro, and Mariners are really that way. I think we ought to think about how would we approach Anchorage for an emergency, temporary change in the tax cap. Because I think we will get to the position we can't come up with how do we make this city work with this kind of stuff. So I think we ought to be thinking ahead for 4 or 5 months from now when we're caught in the bite of the line there and how to do it. And then be in a realistic, not
demagoguing, but I don't know how you make it.
Demagoguing the issue or running around with their hair on fire and flapping around the chandeliers. We need to build credibility with our constituents, the reality of what we're facing, and so on. Be thinking ahead for that, because I think we're going to get there. Darn it. And please excuse me for running off.
Thank you. It's not only dangerous, I think, to not take this, maybe back to your question, I'll be with you, but to not take this seriously, it's also somewhat condescending not to. I mean, you're assuming the governor didn't mean what he said and assuming some other purpose that may be there, but you have to, I think, say this is what was meant and that you intended. If they just said, yeah, okay, that would be your vision of a good thing, as Ms. Duff said. Mr. Weddleton.
Probably sure on that. So I was curious on this idea. If we were to broach temporarily skirting the tax cap, that has to go to a vote.
Yeah, well, the ballots are printed. I mean,
So
they are.
it has to be a special one at this point.
Yeah.
It'd have to be a special one, it's kind of summer.
Yep.
It'd be about $1 million.
Yep. And I mean, we can think about other things. Can we bond for that delta in our income expense thing? I don't know.
Do we have emergency funds?
I mean, the reserve is there for a reason. Like
Sure.
Mr. Dyson said, you should have a rainy day account, and we do, which is why we have such a good bond rating.
This is a race.
Well, and so what we need is less of a rainy day account and more of an umbrella. So we have to figure out what the umbrella is. Because what we have heard from the governor's administration when addressing AML, this is a direct quote, local governments have been cost shifting to the state for too long. The fact that they have books and books of statutes that limit what we are able to do locally is a problem, and we have tried to get them to recognize that holding the purse strings on local governments was appropriate for many, many years ago. It is no longer appropriate for jurisdictions, particularly like Anchorage. It is especially not appropriate if you're going to take away the revenue that those local governments are able to collect.
Has he proposed getting rid of the senior property tax exemption? I
Yes.
heard, yeah. Down to zero?
No, delete the fund entirely. Repealed.
Repeal the requirement that we do it and allow us for this.
No. Those
Slow
are
down.
still intact. The
So
requirement that we allow the property tax exemptions, the residential, the senior, the disabled veterans, the nonprofits, they're all still there. They're unfunded.
I thought they'd been unfunded for some
They
time.
haven't, but they're
Okay.
just deleting
Okay.
the fund entirely to clean up the fact that so that it doesn't even exist.
Gotcha.
There's plenty of unfunded funds.
Mr. Weldon?
But if they got rid of those exemptions, we don't get more revenue. It just lowers other people, right?
No,
We still have a tax
we
cap.
then have the option of implementing a repeal of those exemptions.
Yeah, but
We
what he's
cannot
saying is,
repeal
it doesn't get us more total
tax
revenue, it
cap.
just, mine
It
goes
just-
down
it-
in a.
Yes,
Yeah.
So my taxes goes down, theirs go up.
correct.
Okay, and
But not if we, but if we have to accommodate other changes, like the school district cut, I think OMB and property appraisal ran numbers, and it's about $1,600 per average home just to recover the school district cut.
but if you say the state constrains us on revenues, but we really constrain ourselves more by the tax cap. Because
Correct.
at all those strings, we still have the tax cap.
Yep.
So it hardly matters. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And bond raters look at the tax cap negatively. Yes.
Sure.
Because it's a limit on revenue that you can collect. They do not enjoy that. They have said as much on the bond rating trips. You guys would be even better if this tax cap didn't exist.
Okay, we really appreciate that. I do want to get the other aspects, and do we have a representative from the Budget Advisory Commission? Come on up and tell us some good news.
So my name is Alyssa Rodriguez. I'm the vice chair of the Budget Advisory Committee. And I will let you know that last time we met, we did briefly talk about the impacts of the state budget, but it was very brief, kind of at the end, and I'm sure we'll have some special working sessions. I took a bunch of notes from today's conversation here. We held our strategy session since the last time you guys all got an update. And so we came up with a purpose statement. The purpose statement is to advise the Assembly and Administration and ASD Board on budget policy to promote vibrant communities through effective communication with a focus on equity and inclusivity. We came up with priority issues that we collectively wanted to address: small appropriations, exempt properties, spending cap, 2020 budget prep and guidance, public safety, stormwater, utility, handling of the proceeds from the MLP sale, appropriate debt levels, and new revenue streams. So we wanted to cover a lot of stuff, and this was before the state's budget even came out, so you can kind of add that to the list of things you want to talk about. At the end of our strategy session, we talked about the fact that we only meet 12 times a year, so that gives us a total of 12 hours, which is not nearly enough time to cover all the things that we are interested in. So we decided that we will do a couple of things. We're going to require presentations and any information that comes before the Budget Advisory Committee in advance, so we have time to read through it, prep, and then we can use our time together more as a question and answer session. We're also going to hold special working sessions on different topics, kind of on an ad hoc basis. And then the last thing that we talked about in terms of trying to save time is using online polls. So for things that we are all collectively in agreement about, which might be small appropriations, for example, then we know in advance we don't need to spend a lot of time, but we'll poll ourselves really quickly online outside of regular meeting sessions and decide that we can tackle 3 of these in a 1 hour session because we're all already in agreement. So that's...
We should double your pay.
We're being so effective. So that's kind of a summary of the strategy session. And then at our most recent meeting, we had a presentation from Ona on the alcohol tax, and we are currently drafting a resolution on that topic. And then we decided to hold a special working session. This is the first one that we'll hold to hear a full presentation about the school budget or school district's budget. And then after that, we may end up issuing a resolution. But we're going to go over a lot of what was brought up today in terms of their budget. So that's my short summary.
Questions for Ms. Rodriguez? Yeah.
Thanks. That was really great. I just started saying, if you do a resolution on, you say you're there to advise the Assembly, administration, the school board, you do a resolution on the alcohol tax, who would that be directed to? You already voted to put it on the ballot.
And because it would essentially just be a resolution that most likely, we didn't have a quorum last time, so I don't want to say for sure that it would come out in favor of, but I believe it would. We would send it and just kind of support it further, and so it would just be something that is sent to, I believe to the Assembly, that we would send it to, just voicing our support. We're going to try to get ahead of things a little bit more so that we can come out with our resolutions before maybe it goes to a vote, before you have a chance to, render an opinion on it, we would hopefully let you know ours. So we also, in looking at all the things that we want to address, Lance helped us come up with a calendar of when do we need to get things to you so that we have more of a meaningful impact in terms of issuing a resolution. When do we need to, really evaluate whether it's a piece of policy or those sorts of things in order to have our time make the most impact.
Well, if you meet monthly, your deadline was last week.
Yes.
I want to hit as many of these other things we can. Thank you for your service there. Skipping around a little bit, but Ms. Marshall, we continue to be interested in SAP. Are you?
I am always interested in SAP. I'm sorry, I was thinking you weren't going to get to me, so
I know, I lulled you.
I was like, all right, I'll just hang out back here and learn all the budget stuff.
Do you need a second to set up?
I'm super close. I'm just launching it now.
While she's doing that, either Mr. Wilbur or Mr. Slipka, is there an overarching, since last time the big budget change has been tobacco taxes down or something? Anything you want to
Well, yes, and the treasurer, Dan, if you want to come up and provide, there's been a slight revenue update for 2018.
Is that short? I was trying to fit it in as she
This'll
was
take
setting up, but
less
she's
than a minute.
like 1 minute.
Dan talks real fast.
Okay, yeah, good. Do you mind, Susie?
No,
So,
not at all.
I believe last time I presented to the, I'm Dan, one city treasurer. Last time I presented to the Budget Finance Committee, the shortfall for the year for 2018 was about $500,000, where it's gotten worse. And two areas are tobacco tax and auto registration tax. Both of those have come in less. So our projection as of right now is about $3 million under budget. And for the tobacco tax, part of it is always timing based on the purchases that are made by the distributors when they acquire the tobacco. So part of it's timing, but probably more significant is when Sam's went out of business, or left Anchorage, I should say, the other distributors inherited that business, and they appear to be running a much tighter set of inventory, which means that they don't pay as much tax. And so I think there could be a sort of fundamental, change in landscape there. So anyway, those are the two areas that the $3 million, if you wanted to sum it up in two main areas, which we've known about all year, were investment income and then the state municipal assistance. Those two things alone speak to $3 million. We were hoping that tobacco would be more close to budget. It wasn't. And auto registration tax we've seen go down for quite a while. It's just the steepness of that is increased. So that's where it stands. There is one major adjustment still to be made in March, probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks by the Controller Division. They true up the property taxes, and in some years that has been very significant, either positive or negative, and very significant meaning it could be $2 million. So we're not sure quite what the final number will be, but that's the last piece that we don't know. So
Make sure that comes in positive.
I'll try. Thank you, Dan. Ms. Mark.
All right, I'm going to be fast. Just kind of, this is a little, so SAP hiring update. We have just one position outstanding. We are interviewing the report developer. Everybody else we've hired, and we have varying start dates. So the team is filling out, and we're working on the knowledge transfer. So it's working. Training is going well. We've created our new training manager has spent a lot of time figuring out what's there, what kind of resources we have, and we have built out a new site, internal site that actually has has a training calendar, has defect and bug workarounds, it has user guides, it has frequently asked questions, and so anyway, we're getting there. I think basically just the gist of it is the information that we're finding we're sharing immediately to make sure that we can get some assistance out in the field as fast as possible. And then we've also have a training survey out where we're trying to figure out what's the best method to be used to help support the municipal SAP user base. And hopefully we'll get some good solutions on that, be more workshops and things like that. I'm going fast. I know we're short on time. Reports. So we have cataloged the standard reports. We have over 4,000. I think it's probably a little more than that. And we're starting to build our access plans. We have these standard reports that were given to us that we never gave access to the SAP user community. Why? I don't know why any of those decisions were made, but that's what happened. And so we have discovered them. We're finding them. We're trying to figure out what they are.
This wasn't the training issue. This is like standard.
This is actually reports, yeah.
Reports.
So there were reports, because there was an issue in the beginning that said we had no reports, but really we do have reports, but we didn't give anyone access to said reports. So our team has kind of been uncovering, like, look at all these reports that were activated, but were never shared. So now we got to figure out what they are and how to get them out there.
And then do you customize them, or they work in a standard?
They should work, and that's what we have to learn more about. Yeah, sorry.
Yes. Who? Yeah, Ms. Weatherford.
Thank you.
And I just think if we just pick looks at my business and I want to know what payroll was last month, but that's a report.
That would be a report, yeah, like a financial. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we have a lot of reports that we currently use, but there has been, when I started, there was a lot of conversations that we don't have any reports that do anything, and SAP didn't come with reports, and they
you
actually
knew you had
did.
some. You were looking
Yeah.
at some. I
Yeah.
guess I don't understand what we didn't know. We didn't know that
Right.
that there were so many standard ones out there.
Yeah.
Did we make them for ourselves and then discover that there were standard ones?
They were standard ones that SAP creates and or that come with the system. And we had to activate them, and then we activated them, and then in the process of when we went live, I think it was either maybe simplicity. I don't really know what the logic was. It was just to make it.
I will say that in the due diligence portion of this project, that this is an SAP shortfall for sure.
Thank you.
We asked every single person. I personally asked vice presidents and other people, where are the reports? What are the reports? Everybody said they don't exist. You have to customize it. There's like these 3 that you can have, and then all the others. Finally, somebody somewhere said, oh yeah, all of that exists. You just have to turn this on, and you said no, and then we did this, and so it was maddening.
Yeah. So we're figuring out what's there, but there's a lot of them, and we want to make sure we can get them out. Besides just like turning them on, give everyone access, we got to at least open them up, see if they work, and those kind of things. But I think we're getting there. We've discovered them, cataloged them, and now we got to figure out how to make sure we can use them to our best advantage. But this is part of the fun, right? And then we're hopefully have our report developer on staff soon. We're in negotiations right now. And then we're in the break fix. This is what we're doing. This is our priority, is to be stable, break fix and stable. Payroll fixes continue to be given high priority. And I also just want to clarify, in my last presentation I said our goal is to address payroll fixes by March 31st. And that by no means means they will all be done by then. I just don't want, I think there was a perception that meant that everything will be done by then. And what we are doing, or what I'm doing with my team, is I am pushing them. Okay, I'm going to set a deadline. I want you to hustle. I want you to focus, mostly focus. And so that's what that goal is. I just don't, I heard there was some unions that thought that I said that it would be done by then, and I can't promise that. But it is really high priority and a focus.
Too late, you already promised.
Just want to make sure I'm following up on that. Testing is one of our top challenges we are having with these fixes, and we're hiring some extra help to help with payroll testing. Testing.
Sorry.
So if you have a bug fix, like a fix.
Okay, so you've identified a problem. You think you've got a fix, but figuring out if it really fixed it.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to test it, and that requires user testing, and it requires regression testing, meaning like you might test it, okay, that works, but now if I run payroll again, is it going to break 3 other things? Mm-hmm. And so it's really quite extensive. We would like to have an automated testing tool. We don't have that yet, but we'll get there. But right now it's very labor intensive. And so we're trying to figure out what are our challenges, and one of them is testing, and we're trying to get focused on that.
The good news is it's not getting worse.
Thank you. I need my interpreter.
Sounds like neutral news.
I agree, actually, and then enhancements will be evaluated and implemented only if they're we can have a true return on investment. And we're still going to operate that way this year, because break fix and stabilization is priority, and we want it to be running smooth.
So that's the squelch on the wish list thing. You guys only do enhancements that really have some positive return.
Correct, yeah, and that'll be evaluated by the mayor's team, basically. So that's it, really. That's all I got.
Thank you for being brief. Mr. Fuzzy, did you want to tell us on the payroll the sort of effect of this? Well, the effect of the things she's doing, hopefully on a curve that is flat or declining on our payroll fixes.
Yeah, that's right. And the notion is that we're going to be able to finally move the backlog and pay correction as a result of the SAP system implementation all the way back to September 11, 2017. We are very much at the mercy of correcting the defects in the system. So Susie's efforts are a key part of our getting into that story. In the interest of time, I'll say the update on the payroll side is that we're at 75% done with pay corrections. We're up to 77 now. At some point, there may be a data artifact you want to decide how you guys want to present it. That number is moving incrementally, in part because we get new paper pay corrections every month. So if I cut it off at some point and I said, what is the backlog? They are all the paper corrections that we received by mid-February 2019. And that number will get closer to 100. You'll still get asymptotically closer.
Oh, I was going to use that word.
Well,
Gravity break.
So we're at 77, and with Susie's help, things are over, and we'll start talking about this year.
Yeah.
But the number of incoming pay corrections is still low and closer to.
We did have a little bit of an uptick in January, and I don't have full clarity on why that is. It's probably related to year-end issues. When we end a calendar year, there are all sorts of things that happen. We need cash outs and complicated swapping that you can do in some of the union agreements, and so it's more opportunity to into the break. But it did spike beyond even the initial stabilization level. So we were 280 in January, but hopefully fully backed out to that low 100s or lower.
Appreciate it. In the 1 minute we have left, I didn't do the impact of the earthquake or impact on 2017, 18, 19 budgets. Those are both Lance. Any just closing comments, Lance?
I think the departments are doing a great job putting resources from the funds that we created. I think on the utilities that we've spent about 15% of it. On the general government, we've spent about 11 of the amount of money we set aside. The departments are doing a great job. There's a lot going on the earthquake side. We've got Alden helping us, and another hire, and Alex are working with FEMA, so we're tracking those and putting our documents together. We're getting a plan together on how we're going to recover, and so we can share more about that later. As far as 18 is concerned, Alex is closing it on the expense side. On the labor, we're like at 98% spent. The non-labor, we're way under, but we still have some stuff to do to move. So even though while Dan said our revenues are not, we might be 3 million under, until we get 18 closed on our expenses, we'll be in good shape. But we'll keep you updated there as well.
Those at Alden, if you want to stand up for anybody who hasn't met Alden.
Oh yeah.
We all know. Alden is specifically
all
tasked
over again
with getting our $30 million back.
Good. Excellent. Good luck with that. Appreciate everyone being, and we'll just leave this agenda the way it is. There will be impacts from the proposed FY 2020 next month to discuss. So we're adjourned.